good evening and welcome to this Monday, November 30th edition of Referees Corner. I'm joined by the head of referees for CONCACAF, Mr. Brian Hole, and the chairman of referees of Bermuda for the Bermuda Football Association, Mr. Cranston Williams. Gentlemen, first of all, good evening and thank you for taking the time out. We want to be discussing, Mr. Hole, you were part of a technical advisory panel that has been discussing concussions and substitutions. We know that this study group was put together with an idea of looking at the possibility of once it's been identified that someone has a concussion, a substitute could be made and it's not against your normal substitutions. Can you tell us a little bit about the panel of this? Because it was a well-versed mixture of people around, not just in football.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Earl, number one, and Kristen, welcome. And so thank you for having me again on your show. It's always an honor to be able to speak with you and all those football fanatics back there in the lovely island of Bermuda. But let me tell you a little bit about the process and the IFAB technical team. You know names like Boban, right? Luis Figo. I mean, big names like this all comprise this technical advisory team for IFAB. And really, the process is that IFAB puts together a team of technical experts, which are ex-referees like myself, heads of refereeing from all the confederations. And then they have a separate team of former footballers, announcers, people who are involved in the game as coaches. Arsene Wagner from Arsenal is on the committee as well. So what happens is they all come together and they review the laws of the game on an annual basis to see if there's specific areas for improvement. And one of the big things, as you mentioned, over the last several years is this whole idea of concussions and head injuries, right? Because really the primary responsibility of referees is the safety and the protection of the players. And as the game has gotten faster, more physical, right? And the amount of head injuries has increased. And with the increase in head injuries is the increase in not only short-term, but long-term injury to footballers, right? And many times, I have a nephew who's had 6 concussions already, and he's only 9 years old, right? So who knows in another 10 years what the impact is going to be on him. So this technical team has come together after IFAB had a bunch of medical experts also, right? The FIFA medical team, medical committee come together and review and provide input about what is the best way to address this. So after they've met and come up with some potential solutions, they then turn it over to us for us to review and discuss in terms of what is the impact on football itself and what is the impact on referees and managing the game. And the last thing I want to say is that anything that we implement, it has to be able to be implemented at the amateur level, the youth level, not just the professional level, right? Not just the international football level where, you know, you have a 4th official every game and, you know, you have more money to spend on those type of things. So we have to come up with solutions that work from the top to bottom in football.
Yeah. Cranston, just listening to Mr. Hole, obviously it's going to take a little more training for your officials because looking at it, they're going to have to kind of rely on the professional medic person around whether or not this person is concussed, and then the replacement could be made if this is in fact something that they actually put into law. They'll trial it over some places coming next season, if I'm correct, right, Mr. Hall?
Correct. Correct.
But when this comes down, that's more training for your officials. How do you think they will kind of manage that as well?
Well, the officials are very receptive to anything that IPF sends out, but I think that will start with the association at the executive level first, decide we're going to implement it. And as you said, training would definitely be key, and then I guess it'll fall on the club, because I mean, right now it is mandatory for Premier and First Division matches that you have a medic at all matches. So I
Mm.
think also that instead of just having a regular CPR license per se, perhaps be some more in-depth training for the medic. So that would also become a cost factor on the clubs. So somehow we'd have to work it out. But I know the officials that we have here, they're very willing, and if that's what they have to do, I'm pretty sure they put their hands up and say, "Hey, this is what we have to do for the betterment of the game."
Yeah. Mr. Hall, you made a point where you said whenever these things are decided, they have to work for not just the professional level but the amateur level as well. How much will this actually focus on some of those amateur places that have football that can't afford medical people at the grounds? How much pressure would be put on in order to have a game? Because, like you say, it's going to be from professionals right down to amateurs. Cranston, you can hear me?
I can agree. Yeah.
I think he's frozen a bit. Can you hear me, Mr. Hall? Okay, he can't hear me, but Cranston, I mean, that will be a huge undertaking for the Bermuda Football Association, because it's going to be important that there's somebody there that can identify if someone's concussed or not. We see it at all professional levels. You have a doctor, you have all these people who do, a test with someone over a period of time and then decide, okay, yes, this person is concussed. You're gonna need that.
Yeah, we are. But like you said, everything's going to boil down to finances and in terms of what the clubs can and cannot afford. Because I know, like when I've traveled with the senior team, we have to have a doctor. That's a very expensive undertaking. Um,
Right.
I I can't say what it would be from a financial standpoint, but if it's something that we have to do, we have to get creative and start doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Log out.
Something on the internet.
can you hear me, Mr. Hall? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
He's having some internet problems. Um, but Cranston, I know we were talking. Mr. Hall and I were talking prior to you coming on. Prior to this, in the U.S. they've been touting at the youth levels no heading of the ball in
Mhm.
training. It's very difficult to implement it in a game because obviously the ball is going to go in the air. But in training, they've implemented where there's no heading of the ball. But when we see people could see clashes of heads and so forth. It's the one that one doesn't see. It's got to be a growing concern. Um, you know, Somebody could hit the ground, hit the head on the ground, but because you didn't see the collision with the ground, you could just be saying play on kind of thing. But how difficult or how challenging will it be to be first identified by the officials on the field?
As they say, we heard read about from CONCACAF, they say they strive for excellence. So this is where the officials will need to be, as they say, on top of their game. And you have to pay attention to everything that happens. Um, Yesterday, I recalled the game that I was at, Robin Hood versus Somerset. It was a clash of heads, and immediately official stopped the game, and then even the players, because one of the players started blood was coming from his head, and it was immediate where the personnel, the medic, and then the assistant coach came on, wrapped his head up, and it was like a smooth process. There was no waiting, like everybody got right on, and those type of things that we need. And I also our officials here are told immediately if there is a head injury, which also can't come from the top, that you have to get the person on the field, get the medical personnel on the field immediately. And yesterday, both Thompson and Robin Hood should be commended because their medical personnel responded very, very quickly. There was no stopping; like they went and went to action immediately.
Mm. I was a bit concerned in the first half when there was a collision and players waved the medic people off when clearly both players were down in pain and I mean I'm saying it, that's your teammate down. You're not too concerned about your teammate. I
Well,
was a bit concerned about that.
in the emotion and passion of the game, when one team's winning and one team's losing, then you have the upper hand. You just want to continue to play. That's just you have to say the adrenaline rush that the players are on. Because at that time, one team was in the ascendancy and they didn't want to lose that. So
Right.
another team was like, look, we have to get back in this. How are we going to make it work? Um,
Right.
but I mean, luckily, as you said, it did work out at that time. So
Yes.
yeah, wasn't anything too serious.
Yeah. Mr.
Ju-
Hall, I'm glad
I'm
you
I'm
got back.
I'm sorry. In New York City, and
The internet's
the
got COVID.
Wi-Fi internet is not very good. So I really apologize.
It's all good. It's all good. I'm glad I got the opportunity to talk to you. I wanted to ask. I was asking. You made a point earlier about the decision that's going to be made with this substitution is going to have to be from professional right down to amateur. How do because a lot of laws have changed, and I think sometimes it's changed for the professional side because some of the amateur sides don't even have the basics to try to put it together. So how much will this reflect on the entire game as opposed to certain leagues in the game?
That's a great question. Let me first preface all this by in the last several years, at all levels of football, we're telling referees as soon as there's any contact above the shoulder, stop the game. It doesn't matter where the ball is. You don't need to see blood. The first thing is player safety. Stop the game, right? Because you can always restart it with a drop ball with the team that last had the recent law changes last had possession of the ball or last played the ball. So that's number one. And I think I applaud Bermuda, the fact that you have to have a medical person at your games because this is really key to identification and really prevention of future injuries and to players. So, in terms of implementing this at all levels, we have to remember at the youth level, there are many different substitution rules, right? In some leagues, I know here in the United States, they have basically unlimited substitutions, right? Other
Roll over, roll
leagues,
off.
other leagues have five, seven players that can go in and not return to the game. So the key thing here is how do you make it fair and equitable and also ensure that you minimize any potential tactical advantage one team may have over the other team, right?
Hmm.
And Earl, this is why having tests and doing this in some competitions before to really get a good sense of how do teams utilize this, what are the impact on the game in general. So if you, for example, one of the potential solutions is if a team has a player who cannot return to the game because of a head injury, the other team is then allowed an additional substitution at any point in time in the game. So this way, if, for example, at the highest level, there are only three substitutions, the team with the injured player with the potential concussion, they get their three substitutions plus, right? They get to replace this player who potentially has a concussion, and the other team will still get their three substitutions, but they will be given another opportunity to make another sub in the later in the game if in fact they determine they need to do that. So that's one
Okay.
potential outcome, but again, that would be tested in the league or in a competition to see how this works. But we did discuss the impact on youth games and how that would work, and this is why again testing this is is going to be critical, right?
Yeah. How? who determines, or in you guys' study group, I guess, even with the medical field, who determines whether or not a player goes off the field for concussion or a coach using it as a technical move to get somebody out of the game? Because we have coaches that would try to
Yeah.
utilize an advantage of a player's not having a good game. You tell them to go downhill their head, and I'm not worried about the other team having that extra person because I need that extra person right now, kind of thing. Who determines? Will it be an independent person determining whether or not Earl Baston has a concussion and Cranston can replace me?
Right. Well, again, at the professional level, all of that is in the hands of the team medical doctor, right? The team medical individual. Now, what do we do at the amateur level where there's no team doctor? This is why having some tests is really critical to the long-term success of any type of a solution, and that's why there's a lot of debate with some big names saying, "Hey, this is going to be a problem. They are going to take advantage of this." So through doing tests in competitions prior to making it an official part of the laws, we need to gather information and determine how people are actually utilizing this, because I will say that uh, that was the big concern amongst some of, in particular, a couple of the top level players, is that, people are not going to be totally honest when it comes to these type of things, but yet we do have to protect the safety and the health of our players. So how do we put in a solution together that finds the right balance between protecting players and um, and cheat and potentially taking advantage? Because as I think I haven't mentioned here, but the medical staff says at times it can take over 10 minutes to ascertain whether a player can pass concussion protocol or not, right? And as Kristen can say, in the leagues, we tell referees typically give teams and coaches 3 minutes on the field. If more time is needed, you can do that, but give them 3 minutes on the field to assess, and then take the player off. Well, the medical people are telling us 3 minutes is really not a long enough time. So what do you do? A team plays short for more than 3 minutes for 10 minutes? Again, this is potentially not a fair solution as well. So I know that we all want, and I'm sure all your listeners want some specific answers, but the problem is we really need to test it, right? To see how do coaches utilize this? How do players um, accept the fact that they have to be removed from the field of play? And how do we put processes in place where at all levels they have the ability to assess this? Because the current laws of the game, there's no power in terms of referees to assess individual players, right? Because no one wants to put the burden of to tell one team, you know what, I don't think your player can continue to play, but then something similar happens on the other side, and the referee looks at it because maybe there's no blood showing, right? Your player can continue. So to put that burden on the referee is not fair as well.
Yeah. In the study group, did they talk about identifying one or two players to be that extra sub as opposed, because right now you could name five subs, but you could only make three. Now, did the group talk about possibly adding two more and identify those two as the medical? We'll call them medical substitutions.
Yeah, this was also discussed, but again, um, let's just say you take Messi out of the game, and now you got to put in someone that would not normally be a regular substitution back in to replace Messi. Is that fair, right?
Right.
So again, this is a difficult scenario. So as you can see, although I think all of us can agree that we need to do something to protect this health and the safety of the players in order to find an appropriate solution that's for the good of the game is not so easy.
Right, right. And Cranston, obviously for the local officials who are looking to get advance to the higher levels of CONCACAF and FIFA and so forth, helping to identify or making sure that everybody understands, because we heard Mr. Hall say, give them 3 minutes on the field. And a lot of people don't understand that, because the minute somebody goes down and they feel like now you're wasting time, if depending on what the score is and all that, how do the officials make sure that they are giving the medical teams the essential time needed to take care of what needs to be taken care of on the field?
Well, currently, we do tell the referees, like the old saying, if they need 3 minutes, they need 3 minutes because the player safety comes first. Um, the spectators and whatever can say what they like, but the important thing is the player. Without the players, you don't have a game. So the referee has to use I guess you'd say, the wisdom to determine whether or not, as you said about a person faking or a person's really, really injured. And it also requires AR to be vigilant, paying attention as well. So I don't see it being an issue here in Bermuda because our referees, they're pretty good at game management, so I think they'll be fine. But of course, we will give them more training on this if it comes down if we have to follow it.
Right, right. Uh, Mr. Hall, what was kind of the sticking points when you guys were discussing, especially when you get, because you said the medical team met first and came and presented you guys with formats and so forth of their findings. So what was the sticking points from the football side of making sure that when it does come out, it's in practical terms that footballers, not medical people, can understand what's trying to be accomplished?
Well, it really comes down. It came down to what is fair and equitable. I know that that's a very, very broad term, and what is fair and equitable to you and Kristen and myself, all three of us can have our own perception of the definition of those terms when it comes to concussions. I think that the biggest sticking point in this whole thing was, number one, how do we train everyone, right? As we discussed, you brought that subject up. That's very important. But number two, what is the best way to allow a player with a potential concussion to leave the game and not give an unfair advantage to one team versus the other? So it really comes down to what type of sub can be allowed, who can come in as a substitution, when they can do it, because it was really not too well received about the player who's taken out, letting them return. Because if it's taking so long to assess this and they've determined that this is potentially serious, then, as you know, I don't know if you're familiar with concussions, a lot of times the symptoms don't really start to fully show up until a long time later, right?
Right.
And so if you allow a player to go back in, you're really putting their health, his or her health, at risk.
Mm, mm. And obviously, it's going to take, obviously, you guys collaborating as well as coaches and managers and owners as well, because they're going to have to buy into it for their players' safety. They're investing a lot of money, and I'm talking about the professional side and even the amateur side as well, because clubs invest in their players.
Yeah.
But they have to understand that the rules are made to help protect those said players as well. And when you start talking about the guys that you were talking about, Figo and others, who had very long careers, and I'm pretty sure they were probably concussed at one point in time in their life, playing, but didn't even know it.
They didn't know. Yeah.
So are those players more open to trying to explain it to the wider audience, because it's going to take recognizable people to kind of get the message across?
Well, you actually bring up a great point, because one of the most important aspects that was brought up by one of the representative is the World League of football. I think that it's representative of some of the top clubs in the world. They belong to this World League of football. And one of the things that they brought up is that really, when we make law changes or implement things, we really need to do a better job at educating, in fact, the general public, right? The players, the coaches, and the general public relative to what the law changes are about, how they affect the game of football, and to provide some, if possible, video examples and such to everyone. Now, I think we do a good job of this. Kristen can tell you, every single year he has a FIFA referee assistant program course for all the referees. Victor Stewart and others have, conducted those courses. S.E. Barharmist and some of those individuals, right, have conducted those courses for everyone. And in those courses, we have videos showing, right, what the law changes are. But oftentimes we don't do that for the general public, right? We don't
Right.
do that for
No.
you. We don't do that for your listeners. So there's a lot of confusion when in reality the law is clear, but there's still a lot of confusion, and I
Right.
think really we need to give more tools to the MAs, the member associations, and the countries to help educate the general public.
Yeah. I have tried to post you were doing a series, but it wouldn't allow me to post it, repost it for some reason or other. They had it locked off. So I was trying to put up a link so people can get an opportunity
Yeah,
to hear you explain the laws of the game.
yeah. I mean, this is great. If everyone wants, just so you know, go to search CONCACAF Center of Referee Excellence on YouTube. And
Hmm.
exactly, we're right in the middle of two-part offside series. We've published two parts on offside. The third part's going to come out very shortly. We've had things on communication, being a dynamic referee. We had another one on the advantage clause. So we're trying to fulfill some of those things
Yes.
by through our YouTube channel, by giving visual examples as along with words from our top instructors.
And I do believe, because I've actually watched them, that if people have the time to watch them, and it can actually give you a better idea and an understanding of said rules that you're explaining, because you kind of break it down in segments where, if you had any other interpretation, it'll all be wiped out just by listening and watching the video, that kind of explains it in detail. I know we're talking about the panel you were on, but also the IFAB are looking at, and I know a lot of people will be interested in this, is that handball rule.
Mhm.
They've got a panel together looking at that again, and I'm pretty sure that's going to take some time, like this did and will. Them looking at how it is effective or ineffective of the way the rule is written. So we look forward to an update on that sometime soon as well. But how have you, or how have the officials under your realm said they're managing just that handball rule?
Well, this is another topic. I think there's always two topics that are always great for sitting around the table and debating: is offside and handball, right? I mean, those
Hmm.
two. I mean, you can spend a lifetime debating those two topics in general, right? So, in terms of offside, in the last couple of years, IFAB has really worked hard to try to simplify and provide more definition as to what handball is or is not, right? What
Hmm.
constitute handball. And in doing so, I think that we've provided additional guidance, but again, pundits on television, announcers, and everything, they don't understand. So when something happens in a game, they're making broad statements that this was a poor interpretation by the referee, when in fact it might have been correct, or also it could be just the opposite. They're saying a decision by the referee was correct when in reality it wasn't.
Right.
So this creates stir, it creates conversation, it creates controversy, especially in the EPL, right? The English Premier League, in which is the most watched game. And by the way, they have VAR, video assistant referee, right, where they can review. And doesn't mean that those decisions are always correct or not as well. So um, I think that there was again discussion this last time regarding handball, a few slight changes to the law to help clarify, but it's really trying to get to a situation where uh, it's simple, but we don't have I mean, we could say every time the ball hits the hand, it's handball.
Mm.
But football understanding, everyone would go crazy, right?
Yes.
Everyone in the world, this would
Yes.
lead to even more craziness. So
Mhm.
really to try to find the right balance, but at the same time, um, I think it comes down to what we just said, education, right? Really, all of us need to do a better job educating the general public, educating the announcers. Like, let me give you an example, Earl. In CONCACAF, every time we have the Gold Cup, we invite the announcers to attend our referee course
Oh.
as we prepare for the Gold Cup, right? The television announcers. And over the last four Gold Cups that I've been involved with, only Fox, who carries the Gold Cup, Joe Macknick, he's the rules interpreter for Fox on the stage. Only he's attended. So he now, though, is able to go back to the studio when we make a decision and have an understanding as to what is going through the referee's mind when they're making that decision. What are the FIFA criteria or concepts for handball, for offside, for red card tackle, for a yellow card tack challenge, so on and so forth. And I think that he's actually done a great job in terms of providing the public with real interpretations of what is happening on the field. But other channels, for whatever reason, decide that they don't want to participate. And I think then we open ourselves up to a lot more controversy when those things happen, because now it comes down to a non-referee person's interpretation of something that happens on the field, or a referee expert who has retired 15 or 20 years ago, who is watching something on television, who hasn't been to a referee course in 10 or 15 years, and they're making an interpretation. And by the way, oftentimes their criteria is old school and not new school.
Right, right, definitely, definitely. Well, I do want to thank you very much for your time and kind of explaining and bringing people up to speed on the concussion one and where the IFAB are looking to go to ensure the safety of the players by allowing the possibility of having extra substitutions for that medical injury as opposed to just having the three substitutions for a regular match. I know through COVID, FIFA had allowed 5 substitutions because of the magnitude of games played and the lack of being able to have all those players together at all times when it first started. But I think they erred on the side of caution as well, because the safety of the players and the amount of games that were going to be played needed that extra stuff.
Yeah.
When,
And I would
when
say, Earl, stay tuned, because um, 2 years ago, CONCACAF was one of the confederations that participated in multiple of the potential law changes, right?
right,
When we were looking to change handball and a few of these other laws. So it's a potential for us in the future in one or multiple of our competitions to participate as one of the confederations or leagues or competitions that is going to test these and provide feedback. to FIFA. So this would be a great opportunity once we start doing that to revisit that, right, with you and your listeners.
Oh, that'll be excellent. To be a trialist is one of those things where I know a lot of people would like to be, because now you're a center of attention, whether it be for the right things or the wrong things.
Right.
Yep.
You're the center of attention, and I
Yeah.
know I want to say in front of you that Mr. Williams continues to do a remarkable job in getting our young people out to officiate matches, and making sure that our senior matches as well get played. And I think a lot of credit uh, doesn't go to people that are behind the scenes pushing these people. And I know him and his committee work extremely hard to ensure that football continues throughout this island.
Well,
Thank
as I said when we were on last time with your president of the BFA, we're really proud of the progress that Bermuda has made under Crinstan's direction, under David, the General Secretary, and the President, right? And this is why when we talk to other member associations, other countries, we really use Bermuda as an example, as the model citizen for other member associations to follow. And I think, Earl, this is not just true in refereeing, right? You can see it in competitions. Look in the last 2 years, right? In terms of Bermuda's performance on the field,
Yes.
men and women's at all levels within CONCACAF, right? The real change in mindset and the dedication to do right what is right for football, right, and to invest into what is right is really paying dividends.
All right. Well, I want to again thank you for your time. Thank you, Mr. Williams.
you.
Appreciate you guys coming on and having this chat. And we'll have another edition of Referees Corner here on Island Stats next week, the first week in December. You guys enjoy your night.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.